In order to have a major league team in a major league city, you need a stadium, and the Savannah Bananas may have shown us the way.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all the Major League Baseball. Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTube page and wherever you post your social media comments, questions, complaints, insults. Put that hashtag Everyday Sully on there, and it helps me find you. And maybe we can respond to you. And today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. It's a trivia question. I said the Yankees have won 27 World Series titles. What was the only World Series title that they clinched where the final play was not an out being recorded or a walk-off hit? Happened once. The answer, and GRT Hughes on, I keep calling it Twitter, that's what I keep calling it, got it correct. The answer, it was the 1927 World Series where they won on a wild pitch. And yes, the 1927 Yankees, a lot of people consider the greatest team certainly of that era. And they had the classic murderer's row of Combs and Kenny and Ruth and Gehrig and Musial and Lazzeri. And we'll see more through a complete game victory in Game 4 of the World Series. It was a sweep of the Pirates. We'll see more was mainly known as a relief pitcher, but he threw a complete game, 10-hitter, 120 pitches thrown. Would not have made it through the current uses of pitchers, but he finished the game. But it was tied going into the bottom of the ninth inning with the Yankees up 3-0 in the series, but tied 3-3. Combs walked, was bunted to second, and then Johnny Miljas, the pitcher, threw a wild pitch, and then put Babe Ruth on, struck out Gehrig, struck out Musial, but on the second pitch to Tony Lazzeri, he threw a wild pitch, and in came Early Combs, and there went the World Series for the New York Yankees. And of course, that came up. Earl Combs came up during my birthday because he, like me, was born on May 14th. One or two people, I may even bring this person up on another episode, but complained about the number of times that I've talked about the stadium situations in both Tampa Bay and in, wherever the A's play. I mean, they're not playing in Oakland. They're not allowed to say they're playing in Sacramento. And nothing, as of this recording, it's late. It's officially late May. And we don't know anything about what's happening in Vegas. The only thing we've seen is they've leveled the Tropicana Hotel and they're having bulldozers going over it. But that's not construction. That's the end of the demolition. They're just raising it. We don't know. There's no end in sight. And that's one reason this keeps coming up, because you have two Major League Baseball teams currently playing in minor league ballparks, and one is a complete self-inflicted wound. What's happening in Sacramento is a travesty, and there's no defending it. And right now, if your only defense is, well, they're going to make a lot of money in Vegas, A, I'll believe that when I see it, and B, I'll believe there's a stadium when I see it. I have no reason to believe they're building a stadium in Las Vegas. Zero. We're starting to see all sorts of construction things stopping in Vegas. Why? Tariffs and the rising costs to build things and to import stuff these days. And also, I don't know if you know this, but it costs money to build a stadium. It's one of the reasons why I say we got to rethink our thoughts on multi-purpose ballparks. Why? Because maybe it's not the smartest thing to do to spend $2 billion on a baseball stadium and $2 billion on a football stadium when you can maybe spend $2 billion or even $3 billion on a stadium that both can play in. That may make more sense. You may save $1 billion. Either way, we don't know who's financing the Las Vegas shell game in Las Vegas. And what's going on with Tampa is obviously the hurricane hit the stadium, but there's huge stadium issues going on for literally decades. And no one wants to work in St. Petersburg with the current ownership. Doesn't sound like there's a plan B going on anytime soon. And the only people who make any noise are the Orlando Dreamers, who look like they have the money to buy the team and to potentially build a stadium. But I got to keep throwing potentially. You got to keep throwing potentially, because do they have the stadium or don't they have the stadium? Do they have the land? I mean, it's all these things that it takes. We see how long it takes to do anything. And this is the situation. What's happening with the A's, I think that's in perpetuity. I see no evidence to think that they are going to be in Las Vegas if they ever go to Vegas this decade. I think that's safe to say that they're going to be spending the rest of the decade in Sacramento. What's happening with Tampa Bay, we don't know. They're not even pretending to build a new stadium like they're pretending to build a stadium in Las Vegas. But I made a reference to the Savannah Bananas. I'll explain why in a bit, but this is a terrific book that I'm reading. It's by Bill Mullins. It's called Becoming Big League, and it's all about how Seattle went from being a minor league city to being a major league city. And their first attempt at being a major league city was a disaster. The Pilots, who existed for 1 year, they were an expansion team in 1969. They existed for 1 year. And the reason it didn't work was because of the freaking stadium. They didn't have a dome stadium yet. They had to play outdoors in Sick's Stadium, which was not ready. It was a minor league facility, and it was not ready for opening day. And I don't know if you read this, but it rains a lot in Seattle, and the team basically went bankrupt. Seattle was an ideal market. Throughout the 1960s, teams were kicking the tires for Seattle. The Cleveland Indians sent people out to Seattle to say, hey, maybe this is a good place for us to move. They saw the city was primed for it. The city had grown for it. The city was ready for it. But there was nowhere to play. The A's thought, Charlie Finley basically thought Seattle was a better bet than Oakland. Why did they move to Oakland? There was a place for them to play, which was the Coliseum. This has always been the issue with baseball, is it doesn't matter how great your media market is, how great the fans are. If you don't have a freaking place to play, it doesn't matter. And I started thinking about one of the best markets that currently doesn't have a team, and how they showed that the fans there could support a team. And do you know what? We've got to think about an abandoned stadium and maybe try to repurpose it. Hey, have you ever checked your available balance and thought to yourself, hey, wait a minute, where did all my money go? Didn't I have some money in my account? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you can stop just managing your money. You can start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized that I had double subscriptions for some things I had signed up for and forgot to cancel. And I was spending, it didn't seem that much. It was $20 here, $40 here. Next thing you know, that adds up every month. With Monarch Money, you keep track of all that. You can budget smarter. You can save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Manage money with your partner. It's even smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. That's Monarch Money. First and foremost, I got to say, the Savannah Bananas are great. I missed an opportunity to see them live in San Jose last summer, but the next time I do this, I'm absolutely going to do it because they're fun. Remember fun? Liked seeing them. People like watching them. It's kind of similar to the Globetrotters, certainly at their peak. And fans come out and they fill the ballparks to see them. Now, earlier this year, the Savannah Bananas played a game, and it was earlier this month, and it sold out in Nashville. And they didn't play in the minor league stadium. I've been to the minor league stadium in Nashville. It's a good, solid minor league stadium. Nope, they played in they filled football stadiums, and they were sold out in Nissan Stadium. Now, Nissan Stadium, if you're not aware of it, is the home of the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans are a team that used to be called the Houston Oilers, but they moved to Tennessee in the 1990s, and it's easier to move football teams than it is to move baseball teams because there are college stadiums that you can basically hang out at in a college stadium for a bit until a NFL stadium is constructed. The Tennessee Titans wound up going from Houston, and they wound up playing I believe it was they were in the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, if I'm not mistaken, for a couple of years before they wound up playing a year in. Yeah, that's right. Actually, right here, they spent a year playing in Memphis at the Liberty Bowl, which is a college stadium, but it fits. And then they played in Vanderbilt Stadium until the Nissan Stadium, which I can't remember what the hell it was called initially. It was probably, I don't know, Dolly Parton Stadium or something. I don't know what it was called, but that was built for the Oilers, and they rechristened them the Tennessee Titans. Well, the Nissan Stadium seats, what is it, 69,000 people? Roughly, let's say 70,000 people. And they sold out the Savannah Bananas game. Sold out. Let's just call it 70,000 people there to see a baseball show. Now, I can't sit here and claim that the stadium is ideal for baseball. If you've seen the thumbnail that I have for this particular episode, I'll put it up here on the YouTube video. But I just want to just show you something here, because with this, I think we could possibly see a temporary solution for two problems that have no temporary solutions on the horizon. Look at that picture. Okay. Sorry, it's not fitted to the screen. Now, that place is packed. That place is absolutely packed to the gills. Now, I think you can see a major problem is the shape of the stadium, because it's not a multi-purpose ballpark. The right field line is about 100 feet too short to be a right field porch. Now, that plays to the fun of the Savannah Bananas. Probably wouldn't be too great of a situation for Major League Baseball. However, I will make this pitch. We saw this happen, speaking of pitch, with a soccer pitch in London when they fitted it for the Yankees-Red Sox game a few years ago. They're going to tear this stadium down. They are tearing down Nissan Stadium because the Tennessee Titans are getting a new stadium. Okay? This is going to meet the Wreckers Ball. My plea for Major League Baseball and to work something out with the city of Nashville and the Titans themselves is to say, hold off on wrecking it. Hold off on completely wrecking it. And bear with me for a second. Instead of knocking down the whole stadium, why don't you do a selective demolition? Why don't you take down, and I put the picture up again for those of you just listening, everything that would be basically in right field, and do a halfway demolition, so you can expand the park out and have something resembling a right field line and a right field porch. and the rest of the stadium you keep intact. What if that happened? That doesn't mean you would do a complete demolition, and it doesn't mean you'd build a complete stadium, but you'd be able to have a potential major league ready facility, at least temporarily, in Nashville. Nashville is the most obvious market. Obviously, they got great sports fans. Obviously, they got some fans who are interested in baseball. Obviously, they're a huge city with lots of corporate money, and you could do all sorts of real estate deals, which seem to be the main thing people are worried about there. And you get lots of corporate money coming in there, and you have fans who are the exact type of fans that you want in baseball, in that they're deep roots in the city. They're not transplanted relatively recently. You go back generations and generations, and lots of absolute pride in Nashville. Hell, you saw that in the movie back in the 70s, Nashville, in the TV show that came out not too long ago. And I've been to Nashville. People are proud to be of Nashville. It's one of those weird provincial cities where they live in their own universe, kind of like Boston, which I don't know if you've figured this out, but are big baseball people. And they're very big sports fans there. They've embraced the Predators. They've embraced the Tennessee Titans. I'm sure there are Memphis Grizzly fans there too, because that's the closest you're going to get of basketball in Nashville. They're big college basketball fans. They're big Vanderbilt fans. And I think Major League Baseball would thrive there. And if you don't tear down this one totally and have it be at least a temporary situation until they figure out how to build a big new ballpark and everything like that, you could probably have, if you started, like they're supposed to be finishing the final Titan season in 2026 to open it in 2027. Well, what if you have by 2028 the partial demolition done and the new reconfiguration for baseball? So by 2028, you could put a Major League Baseball team in Nashville. And I can't stress this enough. I do not like the idea of moving a team out of a market. I want the Rays to survive in Central Florida, but without a stadium in Tampa and without a stadium in Orlando, they're not going anywhere, and they're not doing anything until 2028. At 2029, if everything goes right. If the Rays move to Nashville in that temporary situation, and Major League Baseball will inevitably expand, and they would expand a team back into Central Florida, much like they expanded back to Seattle when the Pilots failed, but they brought in the Mariners in several years later when there was a place for them to play. It was the Kingdome. You put them in a situation where, all right, Tampa, are you going to build a new ballpark? All right, Orlando, are you going to build a new ballpark? Which one you can get your act together? Meanwhile, we don't have a major league team playing in a minor league stadium. Or how about addressing the elephant in the room? I'm not talking about Stomper here. The A's, they're not allowed to say it, but they play in Sacramento. No longer in Oakland. They had a AAA team in Nashville. Instead of tearing down the stadium, repurpose it for a little bit. You saw they didn't tear down Turner Field. That became a college football stadium in Atlanta. You can repurpose some of these things. You can. You can figure out other ways to use this. And eventually there will be a baseball only stadium in Nashville. And then you finish knocking the damn thing down. But do you know what? If you have an opportunity to have a team playing in there by 2028 in Nashville, in not the best situation, but a better situation we have now, why don't you do that? Someone explain, where's the con to that? Where is the con to that? And yeah, 2028 seems like a long way away. We're in 2025 now. You're basically talking about the 2026 and 2027 season with, I'm just going to keep saying the Rays, playing somewhere, because it's not going to be Steinbrenner Field after this year. There's a real possibility that a Major League Baseball team will not have a stadium to play in next year. You have to come up with a solution. And I don't want to move a team out of a market But this has been the chickens coming home to roost for moving away from multi-purpose stadiums. Yeah, it was cool when it was Camden Yards, but that was, 35 years ago, more than that. And now people are used to stadiums like that. Maybe the coolest thing in the world would be a multi-purpose park. But either way, instead of knocking that place down, for a couple of years, repurpose it. And in 2028, 2029, and let's say 2030, they use that as a park. And by the end of that time, that's enough time to build a baseball stadium in Nashville. That's a better solution than the Rays walking around with bags looking for a place to play, or the A's not knowing how long they're going to play in a minor league park. And we're seeing the effects of it being playing in a minor league park is detrimental to the team, and to eventually to play where? Vegas? Really? You still think that's happening now? Okay. Giving the Vegas, which again, I'll believe it when I see it. And we are now almost in June. This was a groundbreaking was supposed to be taking place. It was the first third of this year. That's in the rearview mirror, folks. We're about to fetch the second half of this year pretty soon. Do they have money? What's the plan? Are they building anything? Nope. How much longer are we going to do this? Well, I'm going to keep talking about this. Sorry, those of you who don't like when I talk about it. Until we have some solutions, and we got to start thinking outside the box, because right now the box sucks. Something I like to do on this show from time to time is to bring up some of the great figures in baseball history who you may not be familiar with. And if you are a baseball fan and historian like myself, you probably have heard the name Martin Dihigo, but maybe you haven't. He was a player who was absolutely beloved and was given hero worship during his time as a baseball player. Native of Cuba, was born on May 25th, couple of days from now. In 1905, he died as a 65-year-old man, almost 66. He died on May 20th, 1971. His best years were playing in the 1920s and 1930s, where he was the best right-handed hitter in the Negro Leagues. He had great power. He had great discipline. His slugging percentage was off the charts, and he played in the 20s, 30s, and into the 40s. And this was a man who was nicknamed the Immortal, or the Maestro. He was a pitcher. He was a outfielder. He eventually became a manager. He was a two-way player. He had a terrific earned run average and was a 307 hitter. He had great power. He could start the game and then go in and play any position. And he was someone who was a great hero in Cuba and part of their national teams that they played for. He came to America as a first baseman, but wound up playing many, many years where he was the best hitter all around, where he would be playing for the Homestead Grays and later the Hilldale Giants. Now, a lot of the stats were not always compiled during a lot of those years. And then when he went and played a big chunk of his prime going back to Cuba, played in the Cuban leagues. Then he played in Venezuela, and a lot of great players played in Venezuela, because some of the people there who were had a lot of money paid for the best players. He got to play with Josh Gibson. Some of those teams were integrated, so he got to play with future Hall of Famer Johnny Mize as well, who was just overwhelmed by the man's talent. And then he went on, and he wound up becoming a manager for many, many years, as he was this great all-around hitter, great pitcher, and apparently his baseball intellect was off the charts, and later became an announcer. We'll never know all of his stats because, not all of many of those games, they didn't have stats being recorded. But we do know that the people who played with him and played against him saw that he was an overwhelming talent. No less than Buck O'Neil said he was probably the most talented player, all-around player he saw. Now, the great Hall of Famer Buck O'Neil had a good eye for talent. Remember, he scouted Ernie Banks. He scouted Lou Brock. He brought him right down to the years of Joe Carter when he was still working for the Cubs. And so when I see someone that Buck O'Neil described as one of the great players of all time, well, do you know what? I got to take his word for it. This is, of course, one of the great tragedies of segregated baseball, that we never did get to see Martin Dihigo bat against some of the great pitchers of the teens, of the 20s and the 30s, or pitch against some of them. But then again, those players didn't play against him either. It's a two-way street. Martin Dihigo should be, if you think about it, I just mentioned Johnny Mize. Now, I'm guessing more of you know who Johnny Mize is than Martin Dihigo. Johnny Mize was a player who played many years in, it was a star major leaguer and is a member of the Baseball Hall of Fame. And he was he played in 5 World Series championships, played for some great Cardinals teams in the 30s and 40s, played for the Giants. And then the end of his career, he was basically a part-time player under Casey Stengel, and he won a couple of rings for his, for his troubles. But he was a batting champion and a home run leader, and narrowly missed getting a Triple Crown, and was just beloved as a Cardinal and as a Giant. Made it to the Hall of Fame. And we know we could associate him with St. Louis and with the history of the Giants and with the history of the Yankees. And when you bring up players and you bring up, this is the first player to hit 40 home runs since this player, first than that, Mize is included in that conversation, and Martin Dihigo is not. And this is a man, he's in the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame. He is in the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame. He is in the Dominican Baseball Hall of Fame. And he is in the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. He has his plaque. He was put in there posthumously in 1977. And in the 70s, they were letting in a trickle of former Negro League players, but they didn't have the tidal wave that brought in people like Turkey Stearns behind me, again, deserving Hall of Famers, but he was part of the first trickle of players who came in because his impact on the game for people who saw him play was strong enough to say, yeah, what are we doing? Could Martin Dihigo, he played for the Negro League teams in Pittsburgh and in New York. Would he have been a great Pirate? Would he have been a great New York Giant? Would he have been a great Brooklyn Dodger? Could he have been on a team like the Phillies or the Browns who couldn't win a World Series during that time? Would he have helped change the direction of baseball? We don't know. We don't know. But what I'd like to do in this show every once in a while is to at least keep someone's name alive, because in a small way that helps keep someone be immortal. And as I said, one of his nicknames was the Immortal. Brings us to today's trivia question. Talk about, you go back to previous, this is the first time since this Hall of Famer, that Hall of Famer. Freddie Freeman, a couple of years ago, recorded 200 hits for the Dodgers. That was the first time that in 2022 was the first time a Dodger hit 200 hits since what current member of the Baseball Hall of Fame? What was the name of the last Dodger before Freddie Freeman to collect 200 hits in one season? And that person is in the Hall of Fame. Put your answer right down here and follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And leave your messages here and use that hashtag EverydaySully. Talking about thinking outside the box, because the box sucks in terms of stadiums, and remembering Martin Dihigo, This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.